I've got this Mitre saw that I use a lot in projects, but the problem is it kicks up a ton of dust, and I'm always cleaning up all over the place. And I've seen quite a few videos where you can build like a contraption over here and then replace this and get it to suck up most of the dust. I mean, it still kicks up a little bit of dust, but it's like 95% of the dust clean. And I've also watched another video where they've got these Cyclone dust collectors. The plan is to make two videos, one where I do a Cyclone dust collector connected to my vacuum cleaner. Later on I might actually make a blower for it, but that can be a third video. And then the second video will be me connecting that up to here and then making a contraption where it will suck it in. So this is the vacuum cleaner that I do have, and the plan is to connect it up to here. And then I'm going to use a bunch of paint buckets and random stuff to get it working. So I want to try keep this as cheap as possible. In other words, not buy anything. I found two buckets that will hopefully do the job. This bucket's a food grade bucket. I don't have the lid anymore. And this bucket's a paint bucket with the lid. So the plan going forward, since I don't have the lid, is to put that on top there. So like that. I will then have to glue this in here somehow. So glue it on there. So then what I'll be able to do is use the lid as the connection which comes off. I'll probably have to put like some sort of seal in here or clamps or something to keep it sealed up properly. And then the way the Cyclone works is the outlet will be on the top here, and there's a nice little circle there for me to put it onto, and then the inlet will be at an angle, and then it'll cyclone like this, and then there's something called a baffle at the bottom, which I'm assuming prevents the dust, the cyclone picking up the dust at the bottom and taking it to the top. So for starters, I'm going to probably clean this off. Paint is very old. I'll just mix it together. So I'm just going to close this up and mix it together a bit. So that's what I've got out. So it's about 2.5 olive bottles of paint. There will be a bit of a gap at the bottom here. So the gap will allow me to put a screw in there. Now if I 3D print a part which goes with this curve, this complex curve, and then maybe connects onto here and then screws in at the bottom in multiple places, and then so it hooks in here, so that's just a manual fit, and then it screws in there. That might be good enough. There's not a lot of space to screw it in, but if I use small screws and lots of them, it might work. So hopefully this 3D printer works now. I haven't used it for a while and I repaired it recently. I'm starting off by printing this part, and this will just be a test part to see how it fits and then go from there. There we go. Okay, everything looks good so far. Smoke. Okay, it's not perfectly leveled, but it seems to be okay. So I'll go with that. I've made a second attempt, and then I made slight adjustments, and then I made this third version, which didn't print perfectly. It came off on the side here, but it's good enough. So how that fits is okay. So that's how it fits in. So you can see it's quite nice and flush with it. It sort of clips in there, and then there's a hole at the bottom which I'm gonna hopefully screw into from the lid. So that's 12 of them. So I'm just going to put them on now. And I'll just have to evenly space them But I'll do that afterwards. I'll measure the distance everywhere. And then in theory, this just fits on top. So this should be quite a bit of a squash fit. Yeah, so I'll need a little bit of sanding around there. And then it nicely squashes into there. And then you get that sort of effect. That size circle should be good. I'll just do some basic measurements and get it sort of centered. So to start, I'm going to cut these edges off. Probably there, and there as well. Then I need another plank here with a hole in, which is set up over here, and then I can turn it and cut at the same time. So I'm lowering the blade and trying again, see if that makes a difference. That is working. I need to cut these little corners off. Right now this thing's got a radius of 12. To fit into here it needs a radius of probably 11.5. So I've got a half that I need to go in at the bottom section. What I'm thinking of doing is making a circle thing under the lid. So there's two of them. If I got the plates underneath holding it, then I only need two. I need to clean up the thread that I can do easily. Got this cheapo tap and die. That's working like a chop. Now, just same thing that. I just found this in my spare bits, and it fits in there perfectly. I need to drill a hole in here for the pipe attachment. So if I drill that first, that will give me a place to put the clamp in and then hold all of this together while I'm drilling through. So I might do this first. I'm not too sure what pipe I'm going to be using. The bigger the pipe, the less the resistance. Now the only problem is the only pipes I've got are these vacuum cleaner pipes. I just took off my vacuum cleaner pipe, and one thing I just noticed is the connection is a lot wider than the pipe. So if I could go and find some wider pipe, second-hand wider pipe, like maybe a pool cleaner pipe or something like that, and make my own pipe, then the connection from the vacuum cleaner to the Cyclone would be a thick pipe, and then I could use the same thickness for the Cyclone to obviously the Mitre saw. And then I'd get a lot less, resistance in the pipe, air resistance. These food cans, let me just check the size of that. So they're basically the same size as this. Yes, I'd need quite a few cans, but I've got them already. And all I'd need to do is just eat the tomatoes. So the plan is I'm going to have a box here and covering this, and I'll probably have to cover that as well. And then I'll have so where this goes in, I'll have a pipe coming down here, going into the box. And then obviously that pipe will be made out of similar stuff to that. It's just I've got a separate vacuum pipe that I'll cut a section of. I'll need like probably 1/2 meter for that. And then that larger piece, those can pipes I could put over here. I've got a drill press on a very small drill press on this like table thing. Now it's bolted on, so I could unbolt this, put the drill press somewhere else, take this thing, get rid of it, and then build like a cupboard space here. So then I have the pipe going down here and going into my bucket system. I would like it to go below the surface of the table. So it comes out here, it goes down here, and then I have this surface, so the surface is then clean and I can mess with it. So it's just an extra workbench. And then under here, the top bucket would need to go into the top bucket over here. So the bucket would be here, and then you'd have the underneath bucket. So I could make like a surface that the underneath bucket sits on. And then it would need to blow out. So the top bucket would need to be quite a bit lower, so it's got space for it to come up. And then I could have a secondary shelf where I can just put the vacuum cleaner and it lines up with the top bucket. Took apart one of the cans, so it's got like an enamel on the inside. That's the connection into the vacuum cleaner, so it is loose here. But what I could do is I could print there's enough space here that I could 3D print something. If I go forward with this idea, then at least what I can start doing, I can then carry on with the top of this. So I can then make this board, because now I know the size of the hole that I need to drill through here. And I can carry on making this connection, which then connects to the top of this bucket. I've managed to collect a few of these cans so far. The nice thing about them is they fit in each other. I didn't realize it, but I mean it does make sense since that's for packing. So then sticking them together is quite easy. I also managed to find, this is a different can, so it's slightly longer, and it's the same story, it fits in. And so, well, it's a bit bent there, so but all these other cans are exactly the same cans. I'm going to cut one groove in each of the cans, and the groove is going to be a 45 degree. So if I cut it in 2 cans, then I'll end up with a 90 degree. I want to make a jig where I can cut it, so it's 22.5 that way, 22.5 that way. The other idea is I'm going to start cutting the wood for this section here. So I'm going to have a surface there and then a bottom section where the vacuum cleaner sits. I've got endless MDF, which I bought on special ages ago. And I've cut it into sections, and this I used for the cat. Now this fits nicely here. I'm going to use one of these. I just got to cut it off there for the top, and then I'm going to use a smaller piece, which is the same width for the bottom. The vacuum cleaner is going to sit there just below the surface, and it needs to be able to move forward and backwards on the wheels. The idea for the jig is to have a piece which is cut off here, which is the same height as the can width, and then another piece this side, and then I can move the can backwards and forwards. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut, so I need to cut here, and then I'm going to cut a line in at 22 and cut another line in at 22, and then I'll have to make some way of stopping it, keeping it there from moving. Probably like putting a piece of wood there and just clamping it on. This is the bottom piece, that's the top 2 pieces, and the tin goes here. So that's the basic idea. And then that's the piece for the vacuum cleaner, and then the tabletop is down here. For the piece of wood holding this up, so the section here, it's almost 1 meter long. Now I don't have any pieces that are that long, but I do have all this like metal at the bottom here, and there's some poles, square poles and stuff in there, which I can use. So now that I've got all those cut, the idea is you put this in and you hold it in place where you want it, and then you cut with a hacksaw. Okay, so that's the first problem, is this is... I suppose I could... And how easy is it to cut into one of these tins? I guess I'll be finding out soon when I do that. But that's the idea. And then this thing, well, it doesn't move, but you don't want it to move, so I just need blocks in either end. What you end up with is... So then that can't move side to side. Should be able to fold it like that. If I join that up together properly, that now should be what a 40, well, it's not a 45 degree, it's, yes, that should be a 45 degree, roughly. Obviously, what I can do is only join it up once I've got the thing connected, and that will allow me to then put it on, connect it, then get the other one connected, and then make sure it's exactly 90 degrees, and then tape it all up. See how close to 45 this is. So this one then sits in like there. That one goes like that, and that one goes like that. Yeah, so it's not too bad. Next, what I really need is I need to get this table done. The next job is putting the top table on. So putting the table here. Something like that. Obviously I'll have to, well, it's not the worst length, but I'll have to cut it slightly shorter. Then probably have it sit like there. So it's in the center of this bucket. Probably need it as close to this as possible, so I've got space to move the vacuum cleaner in. Then cut it off on the top, and then have something that goes that way. Then I still probably need something, yeah, and might need a pole from this side to that side, rather than going there. Yeah, that makes more sense. I need another pole then. And the other thing I can do is maybe make this temporary, so it's all bolted or screwed in. That one's almost at the right height. So I cut this one slightly shorter, then put that one like there. Well, they'll actually be quite a bit shorter, the other one, because this needs to be at this height. So in other words, it's flat with that. This then sits over here, so it just fits in there. And then the other side will be used at the bottom as to hold the table in. So this end piece, I'll still have to probably cut this to the right size. And this piece needs to be joined there, so I need to weld that together. I would call myself not even an amateur, a trainee amateur at welding. I've done a little bit of welding, but not a lot. Next is to mark this. The idea I have for this is I cut these sections off here, so I make this, and then I get a block which is exactly the same, and then it fits into here. So in other words, I put the block here and then it will just fit over the top, and I do the same on the other side. I've got these old breadboards that are being cut in pieces off, and it's about the right thickness, so I'm going to use that. I'm just going to cut the little squares out and drill probably 2 holes. I've cut these 3 pieces. This one goes there, that there, and that there. I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to use that underneath, and I'm going to sit underneath here. I'm going to put the tabletop on, and then I'm going to drill 1 screw in there just to hold it in place and get it in the right place. Then once I've got that in the right place, then I'm going to screw this one in properly, and then screw that in properly, and screw that in properly. And then once I've got those 3 in place, then I'm going to start concentrating on lining this up, these 2, and putting them in. Then I'll take that off, glue it in, screw this in, cut these off, and then this should be all lined up, and the top surface should be fine then. I did that off camera. I still need to put the top screw in. One thing I want to show you, okay, what I'm going to try to show you, there, that's the gap. Now the gap's fine, and it goes skew there. So there, you see there. So this, the actual metal is skewed. It's not the job that I've done. So what I'm going to do is just put like a shim in there, just to keep it from doing that. But everything else, so if I press here, it's stable. And that fits over there. That fits over there, and that's touching on the bottom. And I can move that around. And that fits in there. Next is this table here where the vacuum cleaner sits on. So I need to get the height right. Then I've got this offcut from the bar. Now this fits here perfectly. There was just pure luck that managed to fit in. Yes, I have to cut it slightly shorter, that I can just grind it down. So something like that, and then there'd be another one there. This is obviously the bottom section. I've just cut 2 parts out here, nothing serious, and I've got a bucket underneath. So what I'm going to do now is just put the vacuum cleaner back in here and see how much I need to raise it by. So quite a bit. So that then goes in there and goes there. Okay, then that fits there, and then obviously this is a little bit loose, which is expected, and that would then fit right over there. That is now level, so now I just got to do the back piece. That's the end result. So I'm going to So I still need to cut that part over there, the section over there, and obviously put like a bottom section for the bucket to sit on. Bucket in there. So I'll probably cut that side more so it comes more forward. Okay, so I want to just cut this part off here a bit. So like just a little bit there. Yeah, that's perfect. So I don't need to cut the circle completely. That part needs to reach there. So that's about that distance. And it's touching here. So it needs to be about there. So like a section. And that I can sort of try do circular. So it goes wider as it goes down, so probably a little bit outside there, so something like that. Now the attempt is to recreate this, and then of course it needs to go over the tin cans and not a small pipe of that, like that. That's one of the advantages of using these tin cans, is the pipes are way thicker. I watched a YouTube video on how to do threads, and this is my first attempt. It's probably going to fail, but we'll see what happens. I printed 3 of these so far, and they've all 3 been screw-ups. And then this is my 4th attempt, which then fits perfectly. So that's now the vacuum attachment. So what I'm now printing is a thing that fits on this side, and then I'm going to print a 3rd part which fits onto there, and then will fit onto the tin. Yeah, so that will then glue in there. So this little notch is sort of working here. Yeah, well, it's not too bad. I've printed this part, which then fits over the front, and I'm going to print another part which sits in this little groove, which will then go down and then fit on with a pipe. But this allows me then to move this. I've got this on the bottom and that over there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp that in there into the right position, putting a clamp through here, and then I'm going to, these 2 bolts I made earlier on, I'm going to put one over there and one over there. Should be relatively airtight. And then obviously this fits in at the top, and you end up with it. This just connects onto the top because the tins fit into each other. I'm going to put the vacuum over there. So I might have to cut this shorter. Yeah, so this is quite a bit higher. So this, that sits like that. I need to cut this tin quite a bit shorter. Then there'll be a tin over there. This is the wrong side. Yeah. So another tin over here. And then this one will also have to cut shorter by quite a bit. Yeah, so I cut most of this out with that. And I didn't record it. These are what I started with. I started with this one and then did these 3 misprints. Now these are the final parts, except this one I'm printing again. This one needs to be slightly wider to fit around that. This is the thread. It threads perfectly on the vacuum cleaner. Then this part goes over there. This part I printed later on because I realized, wait a minute, I'm never going to be able to hold on there properly. That then allows this to turn and gives me something to grab on. And then this goes on there. Then that turns and allows me to then thread it on. And then of course this would go on there, but it would go stick on quite a bit further than that. This is roughly where I'm going to put it. So I can use these as sort of levels or connector points or something like that. And then that would go there. So the pipe would come in here. This is the reprint of this, so it now fits over that, and it's relatively loose, but I'm going to glue it on, so that's fine. I will end up with 2 of these, one for going onto the vacuum cleaner and then one to go onto the saw. I just need to then do an internal thread for this, but I can start printing all these parts now. I can probably glue this whole section, not onto the tin can, but I can glue all of this together now. So I've just done a little bit of cutting, and that was on those wooden blocks that I'm making for the connector to the side of the dustbin, and you can see how much dust this has made up to now. And this dust goes in the air, it goes everywhere, and this is the whole idea of this project. So this finished gluing, it's not perfectly glued because the tops are slightly off, but the whole idea is it works now. So this can still turn, and then to get a tin, this fits on top of the tin perfectly. So that's what the connection you end up with. Obviously I'm holding the phone at the same time. And screwing it on with one finger. And you can see this turns as well. So then you screw it on. And I'm happy I made these like handle things. This is the next version. Obviously that's going to push in, but that's all done. That's the second version of that. Then I started printing the screw, and that's basically what's just happened. So now I've got to clean that up. That was probably a few minutes into the print. After the printer screw up, I managed to clean it up. I then was able to print this. It's still screwed up here, but what I did is I used a heat gun just to bend it straight again. And so And how it fits in is the thread screws quite nicely. And then you end up with that. So it does make the hole a bit thinner. I'll be having the like air box over here or something, and then this will connect here, and then we'll go down all the way here and come out here. I do want to add reinforcement here, but before I start gluing this all together, I'm thinking I should finish this part first, and then I'll have exactly the spot where I want this coming out right, and then I can do that and then get that aligned perfectly. I've screwed and glued that together. It hasn't been drying for that long, so it's not that dry. But now you can see, I mean, that circle there isn't perfect, so I can clean that up a bit. But if I try and make this 90 degrees, there's a little section here that needs to be cut away here. I was originally thinking of putting this thing straight through, but then you end up with the can on the inside. And I'm thinking that will affect the Cyclone itself. The other thing is I want this corner to be as close to here as possible. So what I'm thinking is using one of these and then screwing it in there. And then using the offcuts to make the circle on this side. One offcut can be over there, like something like that, and then I'll fill in the rest with smaller offcuts. I'm also going to screw that onto there. Yep, not pretty, but that'll work. If I go in there. It's not like massively strong, but if I'm gluing this as well, then that should be fine. The air comes in here, roughly, obviously at that point, and then go, so the baffle needs to be like that. I'm going to attempt to use the jigsaw to cut this and see how that goes. So I'll have to start by drilling a hole and then going along the line. And I need to just support it underneath somehow. That should work as a baffle, so it's going that way. and then so that goes in there roughly. The piece that I was supposed to use for there, I think I put it on there. So there's the 45, 45, and then afterwards is this round circle and then 2 extra pieces. That round circle is, I think, the piece that's meant to go there. So I'm going to have to recut it. There's quite a lot of work still left on there. I need to put like a support structure behind that and then obviously tape it all up and do that. That then goes in there. Okay, I might not have that all the way down. Okay, that moves away. Obviously I'm going to have all of this glued in and taped so it won't move. So it's not too bad. Is it going to be a problem like that? So I just need another block of it. Got a hole through there. I need to put a hole through there. And then this would line up like that. That then makes it way more stable. Okay, I need to put obviously those in there. Now I can take the buckets out and the vacuum cleaner out and then take this top off and then connect these 2 things to the top. Hopefully this is dry enough to work with now. I don't have a lot of varnish, but I've got tons of paint. Maybe I should just paint all of this. And then take this off. There's a few things I can do while I'm waiting for the paint to dry. One of them is just cleaning up these joints. I just want to tape it a bit better and get these to stick properly. And same thing here, this is even worse. Then the next thing is, for some reason I only put 8 holes in here, even though I've got 12 of these. I'm just going to stick an extra 4 in here somewhere. First thing I'm working on is connecting this. I'm going to start doing most of the gluing. I'm going to be using this glue. I've had this for ages. It's silicone sealant clear. Is the hole clogged up with paint or something? Why can't I get this in? This hole's not clogged up with paint, so this doesn't even go through it. So that's what the problem is. So there you can see what it looks like on the inside, and then that can move backwards and forwards. So what I'm thinking is putting a piece of duct tape here and then maybe taping it through this hole all the way on the back here. Maybe I can clog it up with something. That will put something that will give an exact gap here and then glue it on there. I've got loads of polystyrene and especially this bubbly stuff. So I can break it up, then I can mix it together with the glue in like a pal, and then use it sort of as a filler. I'm gonna try that. This is the next day. This is now dry. Obviously polystyrene, it can still move, but it's nice and dry. And I took out that little bolt at the bottom now, since I don't need that anymore. Now I'm just going to fill the rest of this up. That should be good enough. Wouldn't mind moving that in a bit. Later on I'll probably come over here with just pure silicone, just so it's less likely to fall out. Next I'm going to put this top back on, then I'm going to put everything back in there, and I'm going to then glue that piece on. So I'm going to glue this piece onto there. So I've got this bit, and then I put that around there and then turn it. That's the basic idea. Geez, I'm going to screw that in. That might have been a bad idea putting this on, because now I'm going to struggle to get that screw. Got this on properly. Yes, obviously these things aren't in the right place, but it's squashed down. And all of this is on. And if I look at this, this is pointing too high. So what I'm going to probably need to do is cut the block off slightly. It's at the right height now. I'm just going to take this top off and then probably glue it in like that. Now what I'm trying to do is move okay, I can't see a hole anywhere there. Okay, where is the hole? I managed to get that on. I didn't record for some stupid reason, but what I did is I used this with some press stick on, and then I physically turned this around. So this whole contraption all the way around while I was holding this. And then I managed to get it in. So the screw is right now in there. Let me zoom in, and you should be able to see the screw there. So there's the screw. Well, let me just, let's switch it on and see what it does. As expected, all the dust is at the bottom, which is exactly what I want. Next is getting this on. Yeah, I'm going to do just a little bit of cleanup because I'm going to be gluing and I don't want dust everywhere. Now the idea is to line this up with that. Looking roughly where I need it. So if I pull that up, then I'm going to put glue all the way around the edge. And then I'm going to put it back and then move them and then try screw it from the bottom. I think that's worked. So now what I need to do is just stick more glue in there. This is the next day. Everything's now dry to the touch. This is still turning. So that's what it looks like from the underneath. I want to try stick this camera in here somewhere and then record it while I'm throwing dust in. And then I'm going to face the camera up like that, just standing directly up. I just need to be careful when I put this on. And then put that on. And I'll take it apart again. And that's all the dust in the bottom, and this is as dusty as hell now. Anyway, so that's the dust I got out of it. Obviously I poured all of that in. I'm not too sure how much is in the vacuum cleaner. That's probably a good idea to test. But I mean, obviously most of it went to the bottom. So this is the end of part 1. I'll be doing a part 2 where I then do the pipes and of course the connections on the Mitre saw and then connect everything up. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thanks for watching and goodbye.